enough screwing around. You guys ready?
Yeah.
That's where you say, aye, Captain. Okay, talk about batteries this week. Oh yeah, got some batteries here. Batteries, all right. And I will confess to you, batteries can be a bit challenging because there's a tremendous amount of chemistry that goes into batteries. And as the years go by, I'm realizing the more chemistry we get into, the less you will actually learn. And so I thought about it. I'm like, why don't we focus on what you need to know? Because the best battery mechanic in the world may not know how they work inside necessarily, but they understand the basics and can troubleshoot them and do everything, but they don't do chemistry well. And I thought, well, let's just go there because there are no chemistry questions on the FAA exam. How does that sound? See if we can, as somebody I know says, keep the main thing the main thing. All right, so, but I think there's a lot of notes this week. So batteries. So prepare to have your hand cramp up. Batteries are classified. Oh, and I just remembered my favorite videos this week. Classified into 2 groups. And you know the typical thing, 2 groups now, then 2 groups later, then 2 more groups, and 2 more groups. But 2 groups according to the manner in which chemical energy is converted to electrical energy, in which chemical energy is converted to electrical energy. Which makes me think right there, I probably could have started the whole thing with, hey, what is a battery? A battery is something in which chemical energy is converted to electrical energy. So we're taking chemicals and we're making electrical energy out of the whole thing. So all right, so how are we going to divide these 2 things up? Well, division 1 is called a primary cell. Some of you may be thinking of, where you normally spend your time in prison, which is your primary cell, I think.
Gen pop?
Is that how it works, Gen
Pop?
I don't know.
Population?
Yeah, is that what it is?
Yeah.
No, then you get your primary cell. Right. Then the yard, which is the secondary cell, I guess. I don't know. You'd have to talk to Larry about that. You guys know both Larry and Phil taught for like decades in a prison, A&P school in a prison.
Interesting. Phil was saying that he had a lot of really, really like smart students there.
Oh yeah,
Like
but not smart enough to get away with the murders they committed.
They're pretty dumb. But like,
Yeah. Huh?
Tracy.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. Yeah. So, and Phil was a Vietnam veteran, so don't mess with those guys, man. They're like really nice.
Does having a violent felony like have any does that like have any impedance on getting your like actual AFP?
I'm pretty sure it does. Yeah.
So does it even? So would you just be taking it just for fun?
Yeah. Some of these guys, well, you have to tell you, I believe they were lifers,
Yeah.
and so it's just something to do. But they got out, and so. All right, back to this. Primary cell. Primary cell converts. I don't want to get too much in that. That's his stories. Converts chemical energy. Oh, I did write it. Energy. To electrical energy, or into electrical energy. Energy by directly using the chemical material or materials within the battery. In other words, chemical action alone, the things that you put in the battery combined will cause a chemical reaction to make electricity. So examples. examples. Which is better? The kind of thicker writing or the thinner?
Rochambeau.
Well, now I just screwed it all up, so be in the middle. There, try that. 2.4. All right. What do you think are my examples here? Ah, that's a great one, right? So your lab 6 volt. So I would say flashlight batteries is kind of, the way most books are going to say it. Well, flashlight batteries. Well, what is that? It's a battery using a flashlight. The ones I use in mine are rechargeable. So that would be your lab, or I guess we could just say not rechargeable. So if it's a rechargeable battery, that's not going to be a primary cell. So primary cells, yeah, like your 6 volt. So what about the battery in your car? Nope, it's rechargeable. Every time you use it, recharges. How about rechargeable batteries? No, because it's put not rechargeable batteries. So that would leave B, secondary. Secondary cells must be charged with electrical energy. So must be charged with electrical energy. Before it can convert chemical energy. Before it can convert chemical energy to electrical. In other words, it must be charged first. It must be charged first.
So Kevin, with the primary cell, when you say it uses the chemicals, do you mean it's consuming the chemicals?
Yes.
Okay.
And a primary? Let me see.
Primary,
I like that. I think, so what did you say?
consuming the chemicals.
Consumes chemical. Yep.
Yeah, okay.
I'll write that. That was a good point there. Consumes chemicals. When the chemicals are all done in the primary, your battery's all done. What do you do with it then?
Pop it up and throw it in the lake.
Yes. I was hoping you guys can bring all good stuff.
What a funder.
It's they're natural chemicals. You just throw them in the lake wherever they came from. That's why when I do my oil and stuff and change, I just dump it down the drain. It came from the earth and go back to the earth, right? That's just direct recycling. Cut out the middleman. Somebody's going to put something bad on YouTube. I can't believe it. No, nobody watches it. Doesn't matter. All right. Oh, yes, of course. Batteries are then further classified into 2 subgroups. That'd be wet cells, battery, and dry cell. So wet cell, let's see.
An example of a secondary cell is a car battery.
Okay, sorry, yeah, secondary cells. Rechargeable flashlight batteries, car battery, airplane batteries, anything that doesn't consume itself to be used. Wet cell utilizes liquid chemicals your standard car battery. Problem with wet cell anymore, I say the lines are really blurring between wet and dry cells. Because before it used to be like the battery that I was working on today in lab. You can open up the vents and if I turned it upside down, water would come, well, not water, but acid and stuff would come running out. You'd say, well, that's obviously a wet cell battery. And then you can take the other ones that we have and you can There's no top, no nothing. You go, well, I don't see any vents. I don't see any caps. It looks like it's completely sealed. I can turn it inside I want. Nothing runs out of the battery. So, well, that must be a dry cell. Well, it's not. It's wet inside, and they have glass mats that have the water in them. And if you really start, you got a screwdriver and try hard enough, you will pop it open, and you can find caps, and you can lift the caps off, and you go, well, look at that. There's actually liquid inside of there. Well, one of my favorite battery stories, it's not so favorite battery story, is, for example, so we're really in aircraft, we're getting away from what we call the flooded cell battery, which is exactly what I'm using. In fact, I won't even replace my flooded cell with the flooded cell. I'll get one of the newer style Concords. And so I had a Concord battery in our Cessna 150, and it was right before I bought it. So my partner, Joe, who's a very bright man, kind of an electrical genius, if you will, very interesting character, but yet something was going on with the battery. And I don't remember what it was. Of course, I wasn't the partner, so he didn't call me and ask what to do. It's just, it's his airplane. So he looks at the Concord sealed battery, completely sealed, maintenance free, don't touch it, don't open it. And he takes screwdrivers to it. He manages to pop the cap off and dug in far enough and found some caps and pulled those open, looked inside and go, well, there's your problem. It's kind of dry. Well, what do you put into a battery? Acid goes in a battery. So he went and bought acid, which you can buy, and I'll explain why later. And he filled it full of acid. And then put the caps back on, put it together, and started the airplane. It charged, and it just made a little acid fountain that went all over the inside of the firewall. And so when you look at the firewall, it's like, all the paint and everything was gone. The battery box was corroded. So guess what I did when I had to buy it? Now, first thing I had to do was get in there and clean that up and fix it. So, all right.
And then he called you after that.
Yeah. So wet cell, liquid chemicals. Now we can do this. Examples would be, let me see, like standard car batteries. And I say standard because, we're going back to the old style. Even car batteries are now, car batteries, you have the maintenance-free. The original maintenance-free batteries, they were nothing more than batteries that had caps on the top that would collect the venting. It would vent, the moisture would go up, and then it would just leak back down in after a while. So they really weren't maintenance-free. It was just in a way to say, oh, look, the water goes back in, but they didn't really. And, of course, the opposite is dry cell, which uses chemical plates. Like your Lab 6-volt, that's the best. Lab 6-volt, like that one. I don't have one here in front of me. Let's hold it up. Good. You got it. All right, so let's go over some terms. You have to click on the terms and conditions here in a minute, except what I'm about to tell you. You guys ever read terms and conditions? I was listening to some podcast to all these people who had won major amounts of money or prizes. Yeah, there was like one lady that won like over $1,000 or something. It said, so if you're reading this, call this number to claim your. And it was like it had been there for like 6 years, and she called. She's like, oh yeah, nobody's done this in 6 years. I'm still not doing it. All right, terms. Electrolyte. What's electrolyte? What?
Kids drink acid in water.
So who? What?
Kids drink?
Kid? Well, not kids. Come on, man. Grown-ups drink Gatorade too. Electrolyte. That's.
It's what plants crave.
It's what?
It's what plants crave.
Plants?
Idiocracy?
It's what
You
plants
gotta watch
crave.
Idiocracy.
I've seen it, but it's been so long, I don't remember it.
They
Just trying
switched
to
over
figure
to
out
water
what to
and
feed the audience, and everyone's like, well, we've got a problem though, and the newcomer's like, well, have you guys tried water? And they're like, the stuff is in the toilet bowl?
I think I remember that movie.
The hard part about that movie is when they first made it, it was kind of a.
it's got a major cult following now.
Yeah, but it was a what do you call it? A comedic satire. It's a little close to home now. Like, that's not so funny now. That's all right. So electrolyte. And you're going to find that batteries, really, if you really distill it down, are made out of common household items such as cookies, bananas, and Gatorade. You will see that electrolyte. So a solution of water and chemical compound and chemical compounds that will conduct an electrical current. That will conduct electrical current. And so now you see why Gatorade is, electrolyte, because it's supposed to go in your body and help with the electrical conduct current of your body or something. Sorry, didn't mean to get all scientific on you right there, but example, sulfuric acid in water.
So you just drink a Gatorade, are you more liable to get electrocuted?
Less, because the current will go through you and not absorb it. We should.
So you're saying we can try it?
No.
We're trying.
Let's see. Oh, I guess we can repeat this one. What is an ion? Car made by Saturn. And an atom. That has lost or gained. An atom that has lost or gained one or more electrons. One or more electrons. So a positive ion is deficient or extra electron. Deficient, so be positive. So negative ion has
So more electrons.
more electrons. Very good. All right, I'm not going to do anode or cathode. I'm going to tell you why. I've got it in my notes here. The problem with saying anode or cathode is, number one, you don't need to know it. And two, when I was writing my notes, I'm like, I want to make sure I got this right. So this book says this, and I opened up the next book, and it had it completely backwards. And I opened another book, and it had it this way. Now another book had it this way. So I decided, you know what? Until they can get it straight, I'm going to let it go. But according to me, an anode in a discharging battery, the plate with the excessive negative ions is the anode. The cathode in a discharging battery is the plate with excessive positive ions. But we're going to let that go, and you don't have to worry about it. See? And now you're happy.
Good luck.
Yay.
All right. I want to make this simple here, so I want to see how this goes. Battery theory. And go back up. Electrolyte. You can actually buy, and we just call it acid, just to be clear, but proper term, I guess, would be electrolyte. So when we buy batteries, flooded batteries, still, like the Gill, for the most part, I always reference the Gill. The pink ones are usually flooded. Now they're not. They make non-flooded, and Concord's the one that makes the sealed batteries. So when you'd buy a battery, you would buy the acid separate. So you just buy a battery just like you saw me carrying around, little vent caps, and you'd order it from Aircraft Spruce, and it would come and it's completely dry. And you'd have to, oh crap, forgot to order the electrolytes. You'd actually order the electrolyte, or the acid, it'd come in bottles, like quart bottles. And you'd have to actually activate the battery. So there's a procedure. And to be honest with you, they're dry charged. So the batteries would come to you actually with the charge, but they're dry. And so you would just take the electrolyte, you could pour it in the proper amount, just straight out of the bottle. You don't mix it, it's already pre-mixed. You pour it in, get it on your clothes, you ruin your clothes, and put the caps on, and you check the voltage, and you'd have voltage. I mean, it'd be enough to start an aircraft. But if you read the instructions that come with it, it tells you then you're supposed to charge it and service it. And honestly, it's funny. Batteries, for whatever reason out in the field, this is really seems to me, especially in general aviation, one of those areas where most mechanics are, it's the way we've always done it. I mean, it's really the norm. So even, without naming names, when I was working out in the field recently at a repair station doing annual inspections and servicing, I'm like, all right, so where do you do your measured discharge? Our measured who? I'm like, well, all of the instructions for continued airworthiness, ICAW, it's like a big thing in aviation. It used to not be, but it is now. Your instructions for continued airworthiness on items tells you, hey, every year, every other year, every 100 hours, you got to inspect this thing like this. And that's what I'm doing with my battery. It says in the ICAW for my battery, hey, every year you're going to take it out, you're going to do a measured discharge, you're going to see if it's still good, and then if it is, put it back in service. Now, of course, the question becomes, something like this, why? So I'm doing the annual on my airplane, and Saturday I go down the airport, and I pull the airplane out of the hangar, and first thing I do is I'm going to run it up, get it warm. If it was an annual, I'd have flown it a little bit, but it wasn't, so I couldn't fly it. So run it up, get the oil warm, get the cylinders warm, because I'm going to do a compression test, drain the oil, and I want it all warm, stuff like that. Well, the aircraft started absolutely fine. Why would I worry about my battery? Why am I bringing it here doing a discharge test on it?
Because that's what it says to do.
Aside from that,
No.
but you're right. You're absolutely 100% right. And that's really the right answer, because that's what it says to do. You don't need to know why. It says this,
Yeah,
because I
yeah,
said
yeah.
so. Because I said so is a legitimate reason in aviation.
Yeah.
And
Like batteries have to maintain like a certain level of charge before like they take off. They have to have like a minimum level.
minimum, batteries have to have minimum of 30 minutes.
Yeah.
So you got to make sure you have that. So 30 minutes. Plus, from it's like I'm an owner, IA, A&P. It's like, who's going to notice? But you know what sucks? Is getting stranded somewhere, the battery doesn't work. So that's how I look at it.
Or worse, you're in the air and your alternator fails.
What's that?
Or worse, you're in the air and your alternator fails.
Yeah, no kidding. So, all right, so yeah, the electrolyte. So that's how that comes. I wanted to mention that. So battery theory. All right, let's see. How can we make this simple? Oh, so far simple. Okay, so batteries work. Batteries work, period. No, by creating positive ions on one plate So just happen to have a battery. Oh, look. I have another battery I didn't bring in. It's a real battery, and it's exploded. And it's actually kind of cool because it exploded, but this is not a real battery, so it doesn't weigh quite as much. There's not quite as much lead in it, but you can see that the plates are in here. I can't remember if I can take these apart or not. I get lead all over me, and lead is not a healthy thing. But there we go. So there's one cell. All right, so you got a lead plate, another plate, another plate, another plate, lead plate, and you have the electrodes right up there. And of course, they're going to go in here. And am I going to connect them in series or parallel?
Series.
Well, if I connect them in series, what does the voltage do?
Yeah.
It adds.
Grows, yeah.
So is that making
Bigger,
right?
bigger.
That's correct. So we want to add up the voltage. And then there are plates in there that are parallel, which adds up the amperage. So series parallel, if you will. Now I got lead on me. All right, so we have one plate is going to have a bunch of positive ions, which means they're deficient of electrons, right? And let's see, positive with negative ions on the other. With negative ions on the other plate. It's actually plates. So when the plates are connected, in other words, the positive to the negative, the plates are connected with a conductor, the electrons equalize. Or at least they sure try to. And that right there is our difference of potential. That's our voltage. That's current flow. That's everything. It's those electrons going, hey, we've got way too many electrons on the negative plate, and the positive plates are missing a whole bunch of them, and we want to the electrons are repelling each other, positives are pulling them, so off they go. And what happens when they do equalize? What's the battery said to be? Dead. All right. Which creates electron flow? I can finish it. Which creates electron flow? I'm not going to write all this one down, but so this was the balloon. Not everybody knows this one, but I guess in this group. Well, sorry, Brandon. I don't mean to pick on him, but for the rest of us, you take a balloon and you rub it on your head. You get the hair and the. I'm just jealous because he could pull that off and I can't.
No, I shave it off actually.
I can tell a little bit. Yeah, you look good. I don't. Even with hair. So anyway, you rub the balloon on your hair, right, before you get in trouble. And you take the balloon, you can shove it on the wall, and it sticks. Why is that?
Static electricity.
What's static electricity?
Isn't that just the exchange of electrons from one matter to another?
Yep. So the balloon's rubbed on the hair. Electrons from the hair transfer the balloon, according to what I said. So now the balloon has extra electrons. Your hair doesn't, so your hair kind of goes like that, right?
Yeah.
And
that makes the balloon.
unless you got your Dapper Dan. Then it doesn't. Then the balloon has extra electrons which want to attach to a surface that is
Positively charged.
so positive. Yep. So you're negative, positive. So the two want to stick together, and there we go. So your hair loses electrons, has positive ions, so they kind of stick together.
Kind of like a static magnetism almost.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, cool.
But it's transfer. It's one wanting to transfer the other, but
Yeah.
it doesn't. So the balloon kind of sticks there. Should have had the one where don't you love little kids with blonde hair? Because blonde hair is like super fine. They go down a plastic slide.
Oh god. You look like one of those man, what was those toys? It's like one of those like a bunch of like lightning going out to like the sides of the ball.
Oh
You know,
yeah.
like you put your finger on it and it shoots out to you. Yeah.
Yeah, I would never touch my kids and they come off the. I'm just touching you off the slides. All right. I'm not going to write all this down because it's not necessary. I don't think it's a test question, but we'll just write this. So I keep. But I love this story, and I would hate to lose it. And that was, well, we'll just put the name here because that matters. Luigi. Some of you know his brother, Mario. He's a little more famous. Galvani. Galviani from Galvanized. And his experiment in 1791. Now, of course, 1791 is not a test question or answer. But I love this because my man Luigi here, he had this theory that electricity was produced in frog legs. And so what he did is he had these frogs and he would put them in this brine solution, which is a salt water, sort of an electrolyte, if you will. And he hung them by a copper wire. And each time he would touch the frog leg with his iron scalpel, the leg would twitch. And so, is that what I write? Yeah, it twitched. Yeah, so anyway, so Galviani thought the electricity was produced in the leg. But what was it that was causing the twitching?
The solution in the
Yeah, the brine.
Okay, you had a brine solution, which is electrolyte,
And then the copper wire.
copper wire, and
The static electricity.
And then
the metal scalpel.
Yeah, the
So
scalpel, yeah.
some
It all
dissimilar
comes into
metals.
a circuit.
So he thought it was the frogs, and
It was just shocking the shit out of the frog. I mean,
basically yes.
Boys will be boys.
So, but then we have this guy, Alessandro Volta. Remember him? And that was 1800. So, wow, that was only 9 years later, huh? He figured out it wasn't the frogs. He figured out electricity was the result of chemical action between. So, figured out.
So for 9 years you thought it was frogs?
Yeah. So he'd take a bunch of frog legs, put them in a bucket, try and make electricity, powered his house. I don't know. Just figured out electricity. Electricity was the result of chemical action between copper, iron, and salt water. Was the result of the copper, iron, and salt. Not the frog. Oops, that'd be I. And then he's the one that came up with the voltic pile, which always makes me think of my dog Zeus, because he does the Zeus pile, which is different than this, which is the first, the first practical battery. In the voltic pile, he actually just arranged alternated stacks of silver and zinc. So it was alternating stack, or pile if you will, because it's not the voltic stack, of silver and zinc. STA stack of silver and zinc discs separated by discs of cardboard soaked in salt. Separated by cardboard soaked in salt solution. So if you like, I'll draw a picture of that. So you have silver, then cardboard, then zinc, then cardboard, then silver, then zinc, then cardboard, silver, and zinc. So it'll look just like that. You can draw that if you want. Don't actually draw that. All right, let's see. Let's talk about then the dry cell. Dry cell battery, otherwise known as the typical flashlight battery, or we could call it the alkaline battery, your Energizer Bunny disposable. So basically they work the same way as the voltic pile. They work the same way as the voltic pile. So we don't need to write all this, but they used a paste instead of the liquid, so they don't have the cardboard in there, but he used a kind of a paste to do it. Combination of obviously different materials. You know, at one point there wasn't a lot of materials, but it seems like every month or so it's completely, the battery technology right now is just going by leaps and bounds. You can't hardly keep up with it. Even in what we're going to discuss here, we're going to basically discuss two batteries, lead acid and NiCad, and aircraft are already moving on to lithium, and then they're moving back a little bit. And then even some airplanes are moving back away from NiCad and going back to lead acid. It's kind of funny to watch how they kind of move forward, then move back, then forward and back, and it's kind of, well, okay. So let me see. Yeah, different combinations: zinc, copper, carbon, lithium ion, lithium manganese dioxide, nickel oxyhydroxide, silver oxide. You know, all different kinds of stuff. But what's kind of important is cells may be connected in series, parallel. So I just put series or parallel. It really could be or series parallel. To either increase amps or volts. So when cells are connected in series, what do we increase? Okay, volts is increased. A, B, C, D. When cells are connected in parallel,
Amps increase.
capacity or amps. So amps, we'll put that. Capacity is increased. Actually, my sentence was way longer. When cells are connected in parallel, the voltage remains the same, but the amperage available increases. That is also the amp hour capacity. Increases. We talk a lot about amp hour capacity. It's very simple. If a battery can put out 10 amps for 1 hour, 10 amps for 1 hour, it is a 10 amp hour battery. Well, the same battery can put out 20 amps for
30 minutes.
2 hours, right? Oh, wait, but that'd be that wouldn't be right. I just screwed it all up. Half hour. Who said half hour? Thank you. Because it's all got to equal 10. For, yeah, double the amps half the time for 0.5 hour. That will be 10 amp hours. Or, this is where I was going, 5 amps for 2 hours. Thank you. 2 hours. That is 10 amp hour battery. We're going to circle around to this, but in truth, the way batteries are actually measured is they don't, the standard is, or was, you don't do it for an hour and measure it. They did it for 5 hours and figured it out and then did the math and said, okay, that's how we did amp hour capacity. It's really based on a 5-hour production. We'll get back to that. Just remember that. Okay, so measuring battery voltage. All right, well, the rubber meets the road here. This is the stuff you got to know. You know this stuff, but you just haven't thought much about it. Oops, that'll be an A. So we'll go with 2 different measurements. 2 different. Really should be 3 when I think about it. Hopefully I don't forget to say what the third is. So 1 is the open circuit voltage. Open circuit voltage, or OCV for short. What is the open circuit voltage?
Voltage of the battery with nothing connected to it.
You got it. Measured with no load. Almost always, higher than the closed circuit voltage, CCV. Is usually not affected by state of charge, is usually, I don't know if I like this sentence, not affected by state of charge until the battery is it's discharged, but until the battery is, I'm going to put somewhat, yeah, discharged discharge. Depleted is also a very good word. And what I actually wrote here is usually not affected by state of charge until the battery is almost completely discharged, but this is not true. So I want to change it up a little bit and just say somewhat. Now it's going to depend on the battery type. And why this is so important is that you're doing troubleshooting, which is really the big goal for us. Learning all of this stuff about being an aircraft mechanic, it boils down to you got to be able to troubleshoot and understand something, because if you can't do that, then you're just an R&R person and you don't get paid as much. It's the person who can do the troubleshooting gets the big bucks and is loved, because otherwise you're just shotgunning stuff. You know, customer comes in with a voltage problem. Well, let's buy you a new battery. Well, that was $500. Sorry, voltage regulator. Guess how much a voltage regulator costs? I just bought one. $450. How about an alternator? Well, okay, we tried the battery, voltage regulator, alternator. None of those worked. Well, let me think. What else could it be? You know, now the customer has already spent $3,000 in parts and labor, and you don't know what's going on. So that's why this is sort of important. So basics, when we talk about open circuit voltage, if you go to your car and you go to start it and you hear that click thing, click, 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 and it doesn't want to start, you're like, oh crap, the battery's dead. Well, I know. I've got my voltmeter with me because I'm in electrical class and I'm now a near electrical genius. So you pop the hood open and you take your voltmeter out and you put it across the top and you go, 12 volts. Oh, it's not the battery. What did you do wrong?
Put a load onto it.
You didn't put a load on it. Battery's going to lie to you. No load, it's going to say, I'm fine, I'm 12 volts. Try pulling the headlights on for a second. Oh man, now it's 4 volts. Okay, well there's my problem. You know, or somebody hit the start and you look at it, it's 2 volts. Okay, well there's your problem. So open circuit voltage will just absolutely lie to you. It's almost to me, a pointless measurement, because a dead battery can still read almost its rated voltage. Now it'll start going down some, but you know, don't expect to see 8 or 6 volts. By the time it's down to 6, 8 volts or less, I mean, it is so dead that it's just, it wouldn't even light the little flashlight. So. All right, let's, did I record? Yeah, I guess I did.